Good morning. Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Good morning. Yes, I
All
can.
right. All right. All right. Hope you guys are off to a good Wednesday. I sure am. It's just some days you get a better workout in than others. I just had the mojo today. So hopefully we're going to back that up with a really good call today. I'll open up quickly, although we do have well, actually, I don't know that our home inspectors are with us. We may have ticked them off last week when we didn't give them their time. So we'll see if our home inspectors show up today. So we have an open floor. Who's got something going good in their world? Confused about something? Struggling with something? Got a win? Rumani, I don't know if you're on this morning. How'd we do with that offer? Who wants the mic? We got. All right, Steve. You're saving me. I appreciate that, brother.
So, Jay and I spoke about this a few days ago. I put an offer in this weekend, and we're talking about how the new form, it used to have a checkbox for our commission. It would be check off gross or net, and now the form only has the gross. And I noticed that the last few offers that I had in there, last couple deals that I had accepted, they were like, we'll accept it, but we want it to be at the net price. So I had to go in and cross that off. So we were talking, I was kind of going back and forth and wondering, why that was removed from the form, because it seems like everybody on the sell side kind of is always looking for the net, percentage versus gross, because it's advantageous to them. So what I ended up doing though, I had my certain percent in mind, and I calculated that on what the net would be, and I just came up with a flat number, and it was like we gave them like a couple $100 discount. So I just made it like, hey, it's going to be a flat commission of X rather than, going through chopping all this up. So it was nice whole numbers. And Jay was like, yeah, that makes sense. That's fine. But he thought it would be something, worthy of bringing up here and what other people are experiencing with that net versus gross and or doing a flat fee.
Yeah, this is a great topic, and I really appreciate you bringing this to the table because when I first got into the business, it really wasn't a thing. Gross was gross. We weren't doing as many credits and you know whatever you want to call them, repair requests. However, we were giving a credit back to buyers. What started to happen, and it was unfair to the sellers, is they're accepting an offer for 500,000, they're paying $10,000 and whatever, so they're really only getting 490. But because the commissions were based on the gross amounts, we started to put that we were only going to be charging off of the net, paying off of the net, et cetera. And then that kind of became the standard as far as I could tell. So this is interesting. Jay did bring this to me, and I appreciate you kind of bringing it to the forefront. And obviously, every state's contracts are going to be different, but please make sure you guys understand your contracts and how they read, because there's nothing more upsetting for a seller, I guess, to get to the closing table and realize they paid commissions on that $10,000. Not much money, but it's still money, right? And it could be 20, it could be 25,000. Who knows what the closing cost credits are, or what the net really was to the seller. So I have always thought that the net would be the fair way to do this. I don't know if anybody else has got any other thoughts, or anybody from another state wants to comment. That is just the new contracts in Massachusetts. Anybody else? Go ahead, Martin.
I usually try to do a flat fee when it comes to land. I just find I end up making more money versus anything else, especially if, so a lot of the land is not paying. But I feel flat fees just sometimes you end up getting more money than, if
Yeah,
you're selling a six, yeah, if you got something for, under, you know, 50 or $30,000 and you charge a flat fee of, let's just say, 2 grand, you're still making more money, and it's not that much on the other end either.
Yeah, I think on the lower priced properties, whether that's land or that's a mobile home, whatever the case might be, I think the flat fee makes a lot more sense. The percentages don't tend to add up to enough, or you've got to charge such a high percentage, it kind of seems a little or feels a little weird. So I've always thought, on that stuff, the flat fee makes more sense, 100%. Anybody else have any thoughts or want to comment on their contracts or how their contracts read? Maybe this is just an opportunity for you guys to all go back and read your contracts, because you just don't want to. You got a great transaction going, everything's going good, seller loves you, and then this little thing kind of gives you a hiccup at the end, and maybe just leaves a bad taste in the seller's mouth. And this is just in general something to be really, really aware of. You guys could be 10 out of 10 for an entire transaction, but there's some snafu towards the end that leaves a bad taste in the buyer's mouth, the seller's mouth, whatever the case may be. That has ruined the entire transaction for you. There goes the 5-star review. There goes the referrals, right? So it's really important that we get these things to the finish line, and we do everything that we can to make sure it's a 5-star service the entire time. And that includes maybe having to take one on the chin at some point and going, you know what? We didn't put it in there as net. I tell you what, technically the contract says I can charge you on this, but I worked it out. We're not going to charge you on that. Or, there was some discrepancy on the washer and dryer being left behind. They're not left behind. I've seen agents say, you know what? Something got messed up in the contract. It's oversight on my part. Don't blame it on your TC or something like that. Take ownership, buy the appliances, get them some used, something. Now it's, hey, you know what? We had a hiccup. So not only did I get 5-star service, then they went above and beyond at the closing and did X, Y, or Z. So I don't know if anybody's got any other examples of where you just said, you know what, I think the right thing to do here is X or Y, and how you handled it. Anybody have anything like that? I know I've had the story of agents, going to final walkthroughs and there's still being a ton of property there, and they just roll the sleeves up and go, you know what, I'm going to get this stuff out. I'm going to put it in trash bags. I'm going to get it to the curb. I'm going to get this stuff out of there for you. Anybody else have a story like that to share, or just something that kind of unique happened? Just, hey, if it comes up for somebody else, it'd be a good learning opportunity. So just so everybody knows, at least on my screen in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a microphone. In order to speak, you got to hit that button. That will unmute you. The other thing that you can do, I think, is you go to, is it chat? And you can raise your hand. And if you raise your hand, this allows you to speak as well. So there's a couple of different ways that you guys can participate in this participatory call. Lauren.
I thank you for those very clear directions on how I could get here. Just trying to help you out. I think we could continue the conversation about final walkthrough if we really don't have a topic to focus on, right? And options at final walkthrough for a good focus here the next little bit. If we do come across things when we get to final walkthrough, things that we should look at, and if there is property or things left in the property, what our options are. If nobody's got anything else, we could roll with that.
Yeah, I mean, do you have something that's coming to mind in particular, Lauren, that you feel like you've run into recently, or it's just triggering something for you?
The number of times that I've gone into a house for final walkthrough and it be full of stuff is incredible. More than not, that I have gone into a property and there either be a full house of stuff left that people forgot they were moving out, I think. Or more commonly, it's going to be things like paint left in the basement and stuff left in the sheds and little things in the closets, to that effect. And yes, like roll up your sleeves and in some cases remove some of those items. Keeping in mind if it's paint and chemicals in the garage, things like that, that there can be costs associated to you for removing them, and it can be a pain. You shouldn't, usually just throw a lot of that away. But more so, like the common practice is to take photos of everything that is left in the house, have a conversation with the list agent, see if they have a plan or way to help you before documents get signed. And if not, bring it at the same time to the buyer's attorney to know that we can't prepare a holdback for that property for those things to be removed. Same thing if we have repairs we requested and those aren't done, appliances or things are now not functioning like they should have. I think those are
Yeah.
kind of top
I
of
think
mind.
I think for me it comes back to communication again. So if you don't even know, you don't know, right? And with regards to like the paint situation, because the argument is always on the seller's side. Well, we thought you guys might want the paint, which might be the case, right? You might want to know the colors of the paint, especially if it was recently painted. I think as a either on the listing side, be proactive about this. If you have the buyer, be proactive about this. Hey, we noticed that there were some paints in the basement. Did your sellers plan on leaving those behind? Because we didn't want them, and we wanted to be very clear about that. We want it broom clean condition. We don't want the paint. We don't want the 2 pieces of tile that are left down there. You know, we are expecting fully broom clean condition. So then we don't have the, well, we thought you were going to want it, and now we don't have a way to dispose of it. Right. So giving the sellers as much time as possible, having these conversations up front. I know there are certain ways that we can get rid of a lot of this stuff for free, and depending on the states. I remember having to get rid of some paint one time in Sherwin-Williams, only in Connecticut, not in Massachusetts. Takes back paint. They only take back so many gallons at a time. I forget what it was, but so hey, if it's whatever, 2 gallons a visit, a day, or whatever, and your seller doesn't want to have to pay. Because at one point I did take some paints and some oil to one of these facilities that processes this stuff. I mean, I barely filled like a couple of like baskets with all this stuff. I think it cost me like over $300 when I walked out of there. So it's not cheap to properly dispose of this stuff. So having these conversations early, I'm assuming that had I broken down the paints and gone here, there would have been a free way to do it, and then taken the oil and gone here, and then I think I had some old gasoline. I could maybe go there, and so maybe just looking into those things, being educated. ChatGPT could be a good resource for this stuff. Hey, I'm looking for a free way. I'm in Massachusetts to dispose of the following things, passing this along to the seller. And as a buyer's agent, just making sure you're having that conversation that, hey, we did notice that stuff. Or even if you didn't, hey, just want to be very clear. My clients are looking for this place to be, nothing left behind. They don't want anything left. Clean it out. Who's got something to add? What are we missing? What else do we need to talk about on final walkthrough and stuff?
Hey, Steve, I can add some context here. So the other big thing to be doing, and it's based on the number of repair requests that you've asked, but there's always some gray area on repair requests, right? So, a repair request could be as simple as, fix a leaking P-trap, right? You get in there, you run the water, it's not leaking anymore. Okay, pretty plain and simple, right? Replace these outlets with GFCI outlets. Okay, you get there. Maybe you hit the test and reset button. Okay, it's out there. But you might also have some stuff like, we want this concrete repaired. We want this drywall patched up. We want this room repainted. Whatever the situation is, the last thing you want to be doing is walking through there on the morning of closing when your clients are ready to sign and there's some uneasiness because what you thought was going to get done is not what got done, right? So I would always suggest, putting in a repair request that they should be done, whatever it is, 5 days before closing, 7 days before closing, and then doing a pre-walkthrough to make sure, even if you're doing it on behalf of your clients, to make sure what you put on that repair request matches your expectations. And this also lends to, whether you ask for repairs or do credits. A lot of times, depending what they're asking for, I'll try to do a credit because then there's no question, right? It's just a credit. The other thing is,
Adam,
asking for.
I want to interrupt you right there because that's something that I heard in there that I've never done that makes a lot of sense to me. I think the repair requests have always read, at least the ones that I've seen and been involved with, to be done prior to closing, right? And what I think you're suggesting is just change it to be done 7 days prior to closing, to be done 3 days prior to closing, 5 days prior to closing, right? So now, and send me some pictures or something. So now maybe even a video. Now I have the ability, I got 7 days to try and figure it out versus I got there on the final walkthrough and I've got 2 hours to figure out a solution. So is that what you're recommending, Adam? That we just change it from prior to close to 7 days prior to close, 5 days, something like that?
Yeah, there's definitely some brokerages out there that have that wording kind of built in. Can you still hear me? I got a call.
Yep.
I'm trying to come in at the.
No,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Yeah, so I think some of the brokerages automatically do that, but yeah, that's exactly what I'm suggesting, and it's just a follow up. Of, hey, maybe get them done before that. And, so the other thing is, if you're asking for a licensed plumber and a licensed electrician to go in there and do that, you're going to want to request those receipts, those invoices. Number one, that they're paid, and number two, that you actually get the invoices, right? So I just had a situation on one of my houses. I had to send an electrician in there. He couldn't have been in there for more than 90 seconds. He had a reverse polarity, which is where the hot is on the neutral and the neutral is on the hot. And he put a cut plate on, right? He didn't send me an invoice. He does a ton of work for me, but they're asking for invoices on the morning of so it's just making sure you get all that stuff ahead of time so that you're not running into issues on the morning of closing, making your buyers or sellers uneasy.
Good stuff. Any other thoughts, tips? Hey, ran into this. It was kind of weird. It left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. How can we solve something? All right. Anybody have something completely off topic? We want to change gears? Steve.
So I submitted an offer last night. I'm sure Lauren's going to be reaching out to me here shortly. So it's a investment property with an investor that has an LLC, and they're telling me they have cash, and it looks like it's a hard money lender. So being new at this, when I submit their proof of funds from this lender saying yes, they have they're going to be funded up to this X amount. How does that kind of play in from like our offer standpoint? Because it's just dealt like as if it's cash in the bank. Is that kind of how it reads from the seller side when they see this offer come in? Because there's no like you know there's no FHA, there's no down payment percentages, mortgage contingency type stuff. It's just a letter saying we're funding this, LLC up to X amount. So I just want to be clear on that. And I'm sure other new agents like myself, if they run to this, they're going to be like, what am I looking at? Because it looks weird to me,
Yep.
getting that letter from these guys. And I'm like, what? This doesn't look like what I need.
Yep. Lauren, I already see her hand up.
I actually don't have a ton of advice, but I was curious if there's anybody here who has dealt with multiple hard monies or can explain them more, because I've had a lot come up the past 2 weeks. We have, for example, one listing where 2 of the offers came with hard money, but in 2 very different ways. One's still going to send in an appraisal, things like that. And so I think really good conversation to have just to understand what it means when we hear hard money, because some are writing a contingency still in there for the date, some are writing it as cash, but then given these documents that say we need to do this, that, or another thing to actually give them the money.
Molly, go ahead.
Yes, I've been on the buy side with a client who's used hard money. And from a listing perspective, like if you like get that letter and you just Google search the company, like you're going to realize, okay, it's not necessarily cash, like someone has a line of credit. It is, usually there is more of an approval process, and it does usually depend on the specific hard money lender and their relationship with the client. Because I've had situations where they don't have to do anything. They just, no questions asked, give the money. But other situations where they do need to do a walkthrough of the property themselves, like not necessarily a formal appraisal, but sort of has that feel to it. So, I mean, in my instance, the buyer decided to waive the mortgage contingency because they wanted the offer to be competitive and they were so confident in it. But I'd say um, your buyer isn't as, if it's not as sure of a thing, I guess having a conversation with the lender to see specifically what they need and if that's something they'd be able to do of waiving the contingency or not. Because if there is more of an approval process, then they might want that protection. But it can be a simple situation where they don't need any sort of approvals. And, I had one closing that it was literally a 7-day transaction and they were able to close like right after the purchase and sale was signed, basically. So long story short, I think it really just depends on the hard money lender and their relationship with the client.
Yep, I think that's exactly it. Right. I know we do a lot of that with the flipping business that Adam runs. He's been working with these hard money lenders for I feel like 5 years now. Right. So he's at a different tier with these guys where they're asking for significantly less out of him. Hey, you got a deal? Show us the deal. He submits it. Yep, we'll fund that. Right. There's no walkthrough. There's no nothing. It's just right. But that's, if you're a first time, this, even with the same lending institution, it could depend on their client, right? So if a brand new flipper went to the same lending institution that my brother uses, they're going to maybe have different requirements out of that person. Maybe we're going to want to get eyes on the property, right? So I think Molly nailed it, right? That is, it's going to just depend. And so as the buyer's agent, you got to have a conversation with that hard money lender, because I think a lot of times the buyer doesn't even know, especially if they are new, what questions to ask. And now all of a sudden, their deposit could be on the line. Amber.
Yeah, so I was pretty much just gonna say what Molly was saying. I have a investor client that I've done a few loans with, and we've always used a hard money lender, and they've all been different. Even when I wrote a loan, I wrote an offer to the selling side that they requested it be written out as hard money and not cash. They've gotten offended and was like, this isn't cash. But then I've also had transactions where we wrote it as cash and it's went through. So we've done a couple deals together, and I have done it all different ways. So it really does depend not only on the lender you're using, but also on the listing agent's preference, because sometimes they're just not as familiar. So again, if your relationship's not that good, they're going to want it to be a hard money loan just so that mortgage contingency is in there. Especially that debt to income ratio really matters. Like even if they're for investors, like they're looking at their portfolio, and if their money back isn't past a certain amount, then you're going to have to go through the whole process. But if their money back is fine, the money they're going to make back on it, then they necessarily use it as cash, if that makes sense.
Yep. Steve.
So then another little weird situation with this one that I'm dealing with is it's an estate sale. The person who is in charge of this estate is a broker herself, and she has her own addendum there that basically you can have an inspection, but you can't back out for any reason. Appraisal that basically you're waiving all contingencies. There's no concessions, no nothing. And my buyer, obviously, we went over that and all these things, and she gets to stay there 60 days after closing for rent free. All these different things. So we went over all that. So it looks to me like this hard money lender has it in there that it's subject to appraising at a certain amount, and then we're over here trying to waive that. So that's kind of the real gray area for me on this one, because I'm like, I don't know, it's just odd both
So
ends.
maybe having a conversation with that hard money lender to be like, hey, in order to get this offer accepted, they want that we can't have an appraisal gap in there, or I mean, an appraisal contingency in there. So can we remove that? And if they say no, now it's your buyer's gamble, right? They're putting that deposit on the line, and we can't make that decision for the buyer. The buyer says, dude, this is still a smoking deal. I understand I might lose my $2,500, $5,000 deposit. It is what it is. Let the buyer make their decision.
Yeah, and
Margaret?
that's what oh, sorry.
Yep. Go ahead,
That's
Steve.
what I went over that last night with him and said, listen, you have no like recourse to get your deposits back. So you're either all in. He's pretty confident. We had a contractor meet us there when we toured it, so he got all the numbers. He feel it's almost similar to almost an inspection with this guy. He's the local expert out in Lowell. But yeah, this hard money lender's out West Coast, so I have to give it a few hours because they're 3 hours behind us. But I'm gonna definitely call them before I submit this today.
Margareta.
So I've dealt with this a little bit. I actually looked into as being a hard lender for the cash. And just so give you some perspective on this, number one, there's like it's a whole nother bowl of wax, I guess I want to call it. There's people who are putting deals together versus people who are the people with money coming to the table. So I think what you're saying is your guy's probably not worried about it because if it's not this hard lender, it'll be somebody else because there's quite a few of them out there now. And especially if you have a persons or people, sometimes it's teams that are putting things together, and some teams or person who is putting this deal together, there's contracts in place about it. There's equity behind certain things. There are properties put in front of it for lien holders. I mean, some of them are very secure, some are less. So that's like with Adam, they know him, they're good with it. But like if it's one of the newer people, they really vet them out. So it's a non-regulated system. So obviously there's a lot of discrepancies, but it depends who you know, and it is because it's so unregulated. There's a lot of risk with it, obviously, but also a lot of flexibility. And just remember one thing about this hard lending money is usually it's a 6 month to a 1 year period only. So as a realtor, I think that's kind of important to understand. There's a lot to it.
Yeah, that just, kind of finish up with a couple of things from using hard money that Margareta put on the table there that everybody should understand. By the way, Margareta, you get a little. That's for turning the video camera on. I love when those cameras are on. But in all seriousness, if you guys should understand the hard money side and maybe have a couple of options to go to and understand how it works, right? So if you're that first time flipper, right, one of the ways that they are going to hedge against, hey, you've never done this before, is they're going to charge you a higher interest rate. And maybe they're going to want a bigger after repair value, right? The bigger gap for what you're paying it on the property. So let's say an experienced flipper might be able to get hard money at 8 or 9%, and a first timer could be 15 to 20%. Right, so that's how they're going to make it up. And then the more flips that you do, they usually have like a kind of a tiered system. Hey, once you've done 5 flips with us, maybe you go from 18% to 15. And once you've done 10 with us, you go from 15 to 12. And once you've done 25 or more, you go from 12 to 9, or whatever the case might be. Right? Some of them might also loan up to different amounts. Some of them might do 100% financing, maybe 95, maybe 90, maybe 80. Right? So it all depends. And again, based on your experience, what can you show us that you've done to make us, the lender, feel more confident to invest in you in the properties that you're picking? So it's definitely something, if you want to work with investors, you need to understand this side of it. I would say one of the better places to go to get information like this is Bigger Pockets and their podcast. So if you're interested in this stuff, I would highly recommend read some of their blogs, go on to their podcast. You can specifically look up hard money lending, do ChatGPT, get a high level understanding there. But if you plan on working with investors, you really should understand the options and the risks that come along with hard money lending. So great stuff today. A couple of really good topics. I'm glad we were able to go deep on a couple of these things, and it's always great to hear your guys' individual experiences with these different scenarios. So appreciate you guys sharing. Go have an awesome Wednesday, and we will come back and do it again tomorrow morning. Take care.